the one, the only, Ben Sion.
Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Just Off. Today we're doing Maseches Gittin Daf Membeis. Interesting share today. We'll talk a lot about partial ownership over an Eved and what if someone's mazik an Eved who's partially owned, partially not owned. We'll get more. You have Ben Sion. We'll talk more about the concept of shalo by an Eved, which we really haven't talked about so much. Let's start from the top line. Last word on the top line. Membeis and Allah. Machlokes b'shikar chetzio v'niya chetzio. The machlokes in Rebbe and the Rabban yesterday is when he frees half of him, and he leaves half of him by him. About shikar chetzio, makar chetzio. Let's say he decides to get rid of his entire Eved. He frees half of him, and the other half simultaneously sells to someone else. Another matana chetzio, or he frees half and he gives a present half of it to someone else. Given the kanafik minei kule, since he's relinquishing his entire Eved, divrei kol kana. Even Rabbana would agree in all cases he's kona. Even with the shtar, Amalei Abaye, but kula lo pli. Abaye says the Rabban don't argue about kulo in this case where you're relinquishing entire ownership. At tani chada, one brayta says a kosev nechasav. You write your entire property l'shnei avadav. You write your entire estate, both two avadim. Kanu, they're kona, umeshachran zed zed. They're kona the estate, and they free each other. Tani idach, the other brayta says, Omer kol nichsayin in the sun and ploni abdai. All my nechasim are given to my avadim. These, the aforementioned names of avadim. Av asmam lo kanu. They're not kona anything, not even themselves. My love. What's his argument of the two braytas? How Rebbe, how Rabbana. Right, Rebbe is the first brayta, so it says it works. Right, basically you're giving half of your estate to one Eved, half to the other Eved. You could do a half, free an Eved halfway, and then the other Eved frees the other half. And the second brayta is the Rabbanan, and then you can't do it. It doesn't work to give half your estate to one, half to the other. You can't do it. There's no partial freeing of an Eved. So the Gemara says, "Lo, idi v'idi Rabbanan." Both braytas reflect the opinion of the Rabbanan. Had the Amar Kulo. How the Amar Chetzi Chetzi. The first way he's talking about where he says Kulo, right? Like Rabbah says. He says, I'm giving my entire estate to both of these Avodim. Hamar Chetzi Chetzi. If he says, the second way he says, I'm giving half to one Eved, half to the other Eved. It's Gemara says, Seifa. At the end of the brayta, the second brayta says, Amar Chetzi Chetzi Lo Kanu. If he says half, he says, I'm giving to Eved one half. One Eved the half, and the other Eved half, Lo Kanu. They're not kona. Miklal the reisha damar kulo. It's obvious the reisha is talking of the second brayta is talking where he said kulo. So the Gemara says no. Prushe kamafarish. The second brayta is just explaining. Av asman lo kanu ketza. You go damar chatzi chatzi. The case is where he says chatzi chatzi. However, if he said kulo, then the first brayta is like the Rabbana. Then it does work. Like Rabbah said, achinam mistabes makes sense. The isak daitach reisha damar kulo. If you'll tell me the reisha is where he said kulo hashta amar kulo lo kanu amar chetzi chetzi mibay. Obviously, if you say giving the entire state to both of them, it doesn't work. If you divide it into half, right? There's a question of partial. You can Eved have partial ownership? Can you have partial ownership of an Eved? Right? That obviously it's not going to work. So if you because of that question, lo iria, it's not a good proof. Tana seifa l'glei reisha. It says the seifa in order to shine light on the reisha. Shlo toma reisha da amar chatzi chatzi. If the sefer didn't say chatzi chatzi, you might say that the reisha, which is a little ambiguous, meant chatzi chatzi of amar kulo, but you would infer from that he said kulo kanu. Tana sefer da amar chatzi chatzi. Therefore, the sefer is chatzi kanu. How the reisha da amar kulo afilu hachilo kanu. And nonetheless, you're not kona. V'bay yisema. A different answer. Lo kasha kan b'shtar echad kan b'shnei shtaros. One brayta is talking about where he writes his whole estate in one shtar to two of them, or when he writes two different shtaros, b'shtar echad ma'irya. Right? If he writes it in one shtar, so it's incapable of splitting the shtar into two avadim, but two shtaros it would work. There's a b'shtar echad ma'irya chatzi chatzi. Right? So the second brayta, which says doesn't work, talking about with one shtar. Why does it say chatzi chatzi? I feel omar kulo nami lo kana. Even if it said kulo, it doesn't work. How can nami kama? This is what the brayta means to say. Av asman lo kanu. Even themselves are not kanu. Vedran b'shtar echad with one shtar. Av b'shnei shtaros. So he wrote two different shtaros. Kanu. It works. If he writes 2 shtaros, but he writes half to each in each star, that doesn't work. Like the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say you can't have half an Eved. You can't free half an Eved. A third answer, lo kasha. Kan v'basachas, kan b'zechar. One race is talking about where he freed them at the same time. He gave them 2 documents at the exact same time. One is zechar zeh. The one says bishlama. The one that doesn't work is zechar zeh. He gave, right? I gave my entire estate to one Eved, and the entire estate to the other Eved. Bishlam basra lo kani dakani lekama. Right? If he gives his entire estate to the first Eved, there's nothing left for the second Eved. Elakamo likni nafshi v'likni lechavre. He should be kona himself and should be kona his friend, and could free his friend. Elam chavarta k'dashini mekar. The Gemara says this answer is not a good answer. The best answers are the first 2 answers. Rashi Amar. Rashi gives a third answer. Shiny hasam the kakarlu avda. Really, both Brises reflect the opinion of the Rabbanan, except for the fact that Brisa says he called in the shtar. He called them. The second Brisa he's talking about. He called them as avadim. By calling them avadim in a shtar, which supposedly is freeing them, it shows that he's really not freeing them. Amar le Rav from the Ravashi. Rav says Ravashi. V'dilma avdei shayu kvar. Maybe avdei doesn't mean that he wants them to still be called avadim. It just means that he's referring to them as avadim because they originally were avadim. Milos na, and then we learn in the Mishnah kosev kol nechasav la'avdo. He writes all his possessions la'avdo. Yatz l'cheretz. He writes his entire possession to his Eved. Yatz l'cheretz. Shayar karka kolshu liyatz l'cheretz. If he writes, the Mishnah says he writes all of his possessions for his Eved. He goes free because he's included in the possession. He's free. Shayar karka kolshu liyatz l'cheretz. He says, I'm freeing everything except a small piece of land. So we can assume the small piece of land, avadim are considered karkos. Maybe that's the Eved that he's not freeing. Rabbi Shimon Omer la'olam hu ben chorin. He's always free when he says something like this. You can't just say karka. You have to say 1 out of 10,000, a small portion. A small portion, we say that refers to an Eved. If you say sada, that's not referring to the Eved. It's technically an Eved is like karkos. He's not exactly karkos. Taima. So the reason Shimon says the Amar Chus Mechan Riyoshan, Halo Amar Hachi, we didn't add that in. Kani. The Eved would be Kani himself. Amai. By Eved Kakariole. It says he calls him an Eved. Right? Ploni Avdi, he calls him an Eved. Ela Avdi Shayak Kfar. When he wrote Avdi means the Eved that I previously had. Hakanami Avdi Shayak Kfar. Ravashi's answer doesn't make so much sense. It really Avdi just means the Avodim I had previously. So that Gemara turns to another halacha. Nogcho Shor Yom Shel Rabo, the Rabo, Yom Shel Atzmo La'atzmo. This Eved, we talked about in the previous Mishnah, right, where he's owned by 2 masters, and he was freed by one of them. So the final Mishnah is that he has to be freed. But let's say before he's freed. So a shor muad or a shor tam, gores this Eved. So if he gores him the day that he's working for his Rav, the damages go to his Rebbe. The day that he's working for himself, he gets the damages. Elamata, if that's true, Yom Shel Rabo Yisa Shivcha, Yom Shel Atzmo Yisa B'Aschorin. What's the problem that we had about marrying? The day where he's working for his Rebbe, he can marry a Shivcha and have children with her, and then divorce her, I guess, before the end of the night. And the day he's working for himself, he can marry B'Aschorin. The Gemara says, Yisura Lo Kamrinon. When we say that he's partially free and he's partially, one day he's an Eved, one day he works for his Rebbe, that's only a monetary partnership, is a monetary split. But his status in Isser is Chatzi Eved Chatzi Mechor. We don't say he's one day an Eved on Mechor. His status for Isser V'Heter, he's Chatzi Eved Chatzi Mechor, and he can never marry on either day. Tashma, Hemis Misha Chatzi Eved Chatzi Ben Chor, no sin Chatzi Knas LaRabo. The Brisa says, if while he was in Eved, right, a shor killed him. Now, a shor that kills an Eved K'naini, if he's a full Eved K'naini, you have to give 30 shkolim, it's a knas, to the master. Let's say he's had 2 masters, one of them freed him. You give half of the money, the knas, 15 shkolim, you give to the Rebbe, to the master. To the inheritors of this Eved, because it really would go to the Eved. Amai Hakanami Lema Yom Shal Rabo Larabo Yom Shal Asmalasma. We should look which day it happened. If he was killed on the day he was working for his Rebbe, the Rebbe should get 30 shkalim. If he was working for himself, though 30 days, 30 shkalim should go to his Yorshim. Whereas Zerni Hakata Kalia Karna. Here it's different because the Karen, the Eved, is gone. There's no more work anymore. So when we have to evaluate how we can split up the money, right? You can split it up if the Eved is going to keep on working tomorrow. So you can say, all right, some days he works for the Rebbe, but he's not here anymore. Once he's not here anymore, so we have to split up his estate fairly. So it must be the case. The Gemara said a memra. The Gemara says, the day that he's working for himself, if he gets nagach by what type of goring happened? Must be lo kal yakarna. Kagon sheiko al yado v'samsa yado. The sofo lachsar broke his hand, let's say, and he's going to get better. You reset the hand that's going to return to his real estate. So therefore, it was sofo lachsar. It's not kal yakarna. Nichala abai. This makes sense according to abai. Amar nosin lo sheves gdola sheves ktana shop here. Abai and Rav Machlokes. Let's say there's a nezek which happens to somebody, and he's damaged for a while, but he's going to return to his original state. So Abai says you give him sheves ktana, refers to the time that he can't work. He used to be a postal officer, and now he broke his hand, he can't work. So for those days that he can't work, 30 days he can't work, 2 months he can't work, you have to pay his salary, sheves ktana. But he buys also sheves gdola, which is basically nezek. Nezek is one of the 5 payments you give when a person is masik someone. So that's called sheves gdola, which is the temporary loss of an arm. Nezek, how much is a person worth without an arm compared to a person worth an arm? So you pay him a temporary payment of that also. According to Rava, he says you only give a sheves ktana. You only pay him the time that he didn't work. There's no nezek over there. Hi sharhu, v'sharim mishalim el nezek. Right? This case, remember in the Gemara, was a shor. A shor does not pay 5 types of nezek. Only a man, right? Adam shemazik pays 5 different payments, right? You pay tsar, ripoy, nezek, sheves, boshes. Yeah, see 5 payments, but a shor only pays nezek, right? So only according to Abai, there's a concept of nezek by a shor. Adam. You can say that the case of the Brisa wasn't a shor; it was talking about a person. Memra lerava lo svirale. It's just a memra in the Gemara said by some Amora. Rava argues on him. Ibayilu mukav get shechura. Another question. Let's say you're mafka, you're eved, you're makdish, you're eved. He's partially free, but as we learn, we pass like Rav Yochanan and Rav. You need to get shechur. Yesh lo knas or ein lo knas. And then he's killed, right? You're mafkir him, but he hasn't got to get shechur. And then he gets gored by an animal. So, is there a knas or no knas? Kesef shloshim shkolim yitin la'adonav amar rachmanav a high lav adam. Right? The whole concept of knas is when he's nevid knaini. If he's not nevid knaini, there's no knas. There's other damages, but the knas, he's not his master anymore. Since he didn't get to get shechur, adon karina, we still call him adon, and he would get the 30 shkalim. Tashma, emis bin shechetzu eved chetzu ben chorin. Those are chatzi knas the rabba chatzi kol for liyarsha. The brayso we just quoted, right? If he kills him, 15 shkalim go to the Rebbe, 15 to the yarsha. My love, commissioner achrona. Are we talking about, according to the Mishnah achrona, the Beis Hillel agreed to Beis Shammai that if he has 1 day he works for himself, 1 day he works for his Rebbe, you have to free him. So he's like Mu'ukav get shechur. He's basically freed, according to Kanas Chazal. He just didn't get shechur yet. And nonetheless, we see there is a call for payment. And where it says, look, Mishnah Rishona. This price is going to Mishnah Rishona that you can keep an Eved 1 day he works for himself and 1 day he works for his Rebbe. Tashma. A different proof. If the master knocks out his tooth and blinds his eye, Yotzi B'Sheno, he goes for free. He goes free, right? An Eved Knaini goes free if you knock out his tooth or knock out his eye or 24 of the extremities of an Eved. But no sin to he has to pay the Eved once he's free. He has to pay him for the value of his eye. If you'll say there is a knas, v'knas l'rabo, and the knas goes to his Rebbe, hashta chavli be'achrine avile l'rabe. If another person would go ahead and kill the Eved Knaini, you would give it to the Rebbe. Chaval be'rabe gufe yayivle l'dide. Well, even if he wouldn't kill him, if he would damage the Eved, he'd pay the Rab. So here, if he's Mokov get Shechor, he didn't get freed yet with the get Shechor, so shouldn't go to the Rab. Why should he have to pay the Eved? So he says, Dilma Kwan Damar Ino Sarich. Maybe this Brisa holds like Shmuel or the Tanoim, that if you're Mafkir Avdo, you don't need to get Shechor. He doesn't need to get, or when you're Mapel Shena, you don't need to get Shechor. The Sanya, the Kul and Eved Yotze Behen Lecheres. The Sarich get Shechor. All the time, right, when you knock out the extremities of an Eved Kanani, he goes free, but needs to get Shechor from Rab. But Rabbi Ishmael says that. Rameir says he doesn't need to get Shechor in these cases. Lezer Omer Sarach. Lezer says he doesn't need. Rabbi Tarfon Omer Sarach. He doesn't need. Rabbi Kiva Omer Sarach. He says you need to get Shechor. The rabbis who decided things on the Chacham, Omrim Nirim Divrei Rabbi Tarfon B'Shein V'Ayin. Rabbi Tarfon makes sense when he knocks a Shein V'Ayin out, because those are written in the Torah. Whole Torah Zichsalo. So therefore, he's free without the get Shechor. Divrei Rabbi Akiva makes sense that he needs to get Shechor B'Shari Varim. The other 22 extremities. Whole of a Knas Chachamim. Because those other 22 extremities are knas by the Chachamim. The Gemara says knas hakrai kardar shinan. Sorry, there's 24 other extremities. Shein ba'ayin and 24 other extremities. You have your 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 ears, the nose, and the aver. So those are the 24 extremities. The Gemara says it's not knas chachamim. The Gemara in Mizrachas Kedushin derives it from a drasha hakrai kardar shinan. Since it's a Joshua the Chachamim, it's not as severe, and therefore you need to get Shechor. Again, this same case where he's freed, but needs to get Shechor. Could he eat Truma or not? Kinyan Kaspa, Merachmana, I love Kinyan Kaspa. What allows an Eved to eat Truma is because he's a possession of him. The Torah says Kinyan Kaspa can eat Truma. If he buys him, you buy an Eved with money. But here he's not Kinyan Kaspahu because he was mafkir him or makdish him. Odilma came in the Mechusar get Shechor or Kinyan Kaspa agreement. Nonetheless, we call it Kinyan Kaspa because he needs to get Shechor. Tashma, Amarav Misharsha, Kohenish is Arev Lada, Bavlad Shiv Chasa. Let's say a woman, she's married to a Kohen, and she has a child. And she also has a Shivcha who has a child, and the children get mixed up. Hare Elu Ochlim B'Truma, they both could eat Truma because they're both Kohanim. Right, or either the children of Kohanim or the Eved of a Kohen could eat. The children of a Kohen or the Eved of a Kohen, they both could eat. These children have to go together to the Goren because only the Kohen gets Truma on the Goren. If the Eved wants to get Truma from the Goren, from the threshing floor, he has to come with his master. That was the takana they made. When they grow up, let's say these children grow up and the father dies, meaning he gives over the rights to the Eved to his son, so they free each other. We don't know which one is the Eved, which one is the Kohen, so they free each other. So you see what? That even though it says they both could eat Truma, now they both could eat Truma, one of them, right, until they free each other, they could eat Truma. So how could they eat Truma, right? One, right, they're going to be Meshachar each other. They're Mukav get Shechor, that we're going to be free each other. And we don't even know which one is a suffix, right? Suffix Mamona Lahakel, right? You have to go prove to him that he can't eat Truma. So he could eat Truma. So you see that if he's Mokav gets Shach, gets to eat Truma. The Eved who Kinyan Kaspa. That's because it's a suffix. We don't know. It's a 50-50 suffix. If Eliyahu would come and tell us which one was the Kohen, so he's completely an Eved. He's not partially an Eved, but Mokav gets Shechor. Hachalav Kinyan Kaspa. But here, he's not considered. Once you free the Eved, he just Mechusar gets Shechor. So he's maybe not Kinyan Kaspa at all. And that seems to be Laskan of the Gemara, that he's not a Kinyan Kaspa. He's not Kol Adono. So that's really what the Gemara is basically saying over here. What does that mean exactly in understanding what really the relationship between an Adon and an Eved is? I will tell you, even though I've said basically there's only Bershusa over an Eved, but there is a concept of Mafkir Avdo, Saraket Shechor. So your Hefker is doing something. What is it accomplishing? I'll explain this further, the relationship between an Adon and an Eved in Ian Ben Sion coming up next.